I bought a remote mountain cabin to build my dream escape. But when I arrived, a stranger was already living in it. She claimed I was the trespasser. What began as a renovation turned into a war of rights, lies, fake cops, and one hell of a bulldozer finale. When I first bought that old mountain cabin, it wasn't much more than a shell of a house in a heap of forgotten lumber. Nestled deep in the Colorado Rockies, it had no plumbing, no insulation, no real roof, just rotting wood, shattered windows, and an overwhelming scent of pine and mold. And still I fell in love with it. Something about the silence up there, the way the fog curled through the pines in the early morning, reminded me of how peace used to feel before life got loud. I saw more than decay. I saw possibility. That was 2 years ago. I bought it cheap at a county tax auction after the previous owners defaulted. I filed the deed, confirmed the boundaries, paid every tax bill, and even got it surveyed by a grumpy guy with a cigar and a laser level. For a long time, I didn't have the time or money to start renovating. Between contract work, obligations back in Denver, and my father's failing health, the cabin remained just a quiet promise I kept postponing. But last month, things changed. My schedule cleared. I wrapped up a massive commercial project ahead of time and banked enough to finally do it right. I spent the next 6 weeks obsessing. Design sketches, lumber orders, solar power estimates, heated floors, water catchment systems, a wood-burning stove that cost more than my first car. I even hired a small team of guys I trust, 2 old contractor friends and a young apprentice who asked good questions and didn't smoke near lumber. I could hardly sleep the night before we left. My brain was buzzing with floor plans and cedar scents. We loaded up a rented moving truck at dawn, jammed full of tools, supplies, generator, and optimism. We climbed up the winding road as the trees thickened and cell signal vanished. I kept grinning like an idiot. This was it. My cabin, my retreat, my long-awaited dream finally kicking off. But the second I turned onto the dirt driveway, something felt off. The driveway looked maintained, cleared of leaves, tire tracks in the mud too fresh to be old. And the house, my house, had curtains. Real curtains, the kind someone chooses. The porch had a new doormat. There was a pair of boots outside the door. I slowed to a crawl. I got out of the truck like a man walking into a dream that didn't belong to him anymore. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, firmer. The door opened, and there she was. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Bleach blonde hair in a tight bun. A bright purple fleece jacket, holding a steaming mug like she'd been up for hours. She looked at me with zero surprise and 100% suspicion. "Can I help you?" she said, as if I was the intruder. I blinked. Yeah. I'm Tom Harper. I own this place." Her expression didn't even twitch. "No, I don't think so. This is my home. Been here a while now. You must be lost." I stared at her like she'd just claimed ownership of the moon. "Ma'am, I bought this property 2 years ago. I've got the deed in my glove box. This is lot 92, parcel code." She raised a hand and chuckled, actually chuckled. "Look, fella, I don't know what scam you're trying to pull, but I live here now. I moved in when it was abandoned. No one claimed it. I fixed it up, made it livable. So unless you're with the post office or bringing me groceries, I'd appreciate you leaving." I took a long breath, tried to stay calm. "Again, I bought this property legally at auction. I have the papers, tax receipts, everything. I've been planning this renovation for months." She leaned against the doorway, not budging an inch. Yeah. Everyone thinks they own things until someone actually lives there. You want me to believe you file something. Otherwise, this is my home. And you're trespassing." I looked past her into the cabin. The old fireplace I planned to restore had been painted white. Someone had hung up a "Live, Laugh, Love" sign over it. The cracked ceiling beam had been covered with fake ivy. My heart started pounding. Behind me, one of my guys, Jerry, stepped out of the truck and gave me a puzzled look. "What's the holdup?" "There's a woman living in my goddamn house." "You mean a squatter?" "I mean a fully furnished, coffee-sipping, curtain-hanging squatter who thinks this is her cabin." Karen, I didn't know her name yet, but of course it was Karen, crossed her arms. "I'm not a squatter. I'm a resident. There's a difference. You left this place to rot. I restored it. I even registered for utility service, set up mail, cleaned up the rats." "Where were you?" "Huh? You." "What?" "Adverse possession," she said like she'd just played an ace. "You leave a property long enough, don't maintain it, someone else moves in, takes care of it, they have a right to claim it. Look it up." That was the first time I heard her say those words. Adverse possession. And it would not be the last. I turned around, walked back to the truck, pulled out the glove box folder. She slammed the door shut before I even made it halfway back. "Try the courts, buddy," she shouted from inside. I stood there on my own land, holding legal documents in my hand with a mouthful of nothing to say. What the hell had just happened? I didn't sleep that night, not even close. I lay on the stiff mattress of a roadside motel bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning like some slow, indifferent executioner. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Karen, standing in my doorway like the house was her inheritance and I was some junkie trying to break in. First thing in the morning, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. I walked in with a manila folder fat with proof. The deed, the tax records, time-stamped property photos, and the receipt from the damn auction. I didn't even sit down. The clerk, an older man named Dennis, barely looked up as he pulled my file from the system. "Yeah, Thomas Harper, Lot 92, registered under your name since April 2 years ago. All taxes paid. No liens. Clean title." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding since yesterday. "So someone living there without my permission. That's illegal, right?" Dennis shrugged like it was Tuesday. "Well, technically, yes. But if they've been there a while and claim something like adverse possession, you'll need to file an unlawful detainer suit, civil court. Sheriff's department won't touch it without a judge's order." "So she can just stay there until I drag her out legally?" "She can, and she will," he said flatly. "Welcome to Colorado." Next stop was the local sheriff's substation. I walked in hoping they'd send a deputy up the mountain to remove a trespasser. Instead, I got a half-interested officer who tapped at his keyboard like I was interrupting his lunch. "Look," he finally said, "if she's been living there, has mail coming in her name, maybe even utilities, then it's a civil matter, not criminal trespass. File your suit, get your eviction notice, come back with a writ. Then we'll help." "I have a deed," I said louder than I meant to. "I own the land. She broke in and took over my property." "And I hear you, Mr. Harper," he replied. "But unless you saw her break in or have proof she forced entry, it's not a crime. Not the kind we handle anyway." I left feeling like I'd just been mugged in slow motion, and the cops had handed the mugger a blanket and a coffee. My lawyer, Mark, was a soft-spoken guy who'd handled some zoning issues for me back in the city. He looked over my folder and nodded grimly. "Well, you're in the right. That much is clear. But she's throwing around adverse possession? That's a long shot. In Colorado, you need 18 years of continuous hostile, open, notorious possession to make that stick. She's playing stupid or hoping you don't know the law. She said she filed something." "She didn't," he said without even checking. "That would be public, it's pure bluff. But she's clever. Sounds like she's trying to establish residency just long enough to make your life hell." We filed the unlawful detainer notice that afternoon. According to the rules, she had to be served officially, then given 72 hours to vacate before we could request a court hearing. The wheels of justice, slow, rusty, and squealing all the way. The next morning, I drove back up the mountain with Jerry. This time I brought a body camera and the court papers. I planned to serve her myself. Just ring the bell, record the handoff, say my piece. Except the locks had been changed. Again, a new metal deadbolt gleamed in the morning sun, and a fresh private property trespassers will be prosecuted sign was nailed to the front door. The same door I bought, the same door I was locked out of. I knocked once, twice. She opened it halfway. No mug this time, just the look of a woman who thought she was winning. "What now?" she said. I handed her the papers. "Consider yourself served," I said. "You've got 72 hours to get out." She squinted at the envelope like I'd handed her anthrax. "Oh, honey," she said, voice dripping with mock pity. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't your little sandbox anymore. This is my home. I've been here for over 6 months. I painted the walls. I scrubbed rat crap out of the cabinets. Where were you? In Cancun?" Jerry leaned in from behind me. "Lady, this ain't squatters' rights. This is theft." Karen sneered. "You threatening me, construction boy?" I kept my voice level. "I've got everything documented. You're not getting away with this." She slammed the door. I didn't go back to the motel. I sat in my truck parked down the hill and just stared at the tree line for hours. I was angry, sure, but more than that. I was humiliated. This wasn't just a delay, it was a hijack of my future, of the life I had carefully, methodically been trying to build. That night back in town, Jerry and I went for a beer. I needed something cold and bitter and legally sanctioned to balance the boiling pressure inside me. As we sat there, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What's the plan if she doesn't leave?" I didn't answer right away, but in my head the seed had already been planted. By the third morning, I wasn't just angry. I was curious. Who the hell was this woman who had somehow decided that my mountain cabin was her throne? Curiosity can be dangerous when mixed with fury, but I had nothing left to lose. I started small, the old-fashioned way. I parked my truck at the general store 10 miles down the mountain, the one with the dusty deer heads on the wall and the old man who somehow knew everyone's business. I bought a coffee and asked the cashier, a young woman with an eyebrow ring, if she'd ever heard of a woman named Karen living near the summit. She rolled her eyes instantly. "Oh yeah, you mean Karen Richer? Lives up in that old Carter cabin? Lady's nuts. Moved in last year after her trailer got towed from the county park. She told everyone she claimed the house under some squatter law." "Claimed?" I said. "Yeah," she laughed. "She told my uncle she's gonna turn it into a healing retreat. He said she should start by healing her brain." So it wasn't just me. She'd been bragging about this. I bought another coffee just to have a reason to keep talking and left with more than caffeine. I had a name, a trail, and witnesses. That afternoon, I stopped by a neighbor's property further up the ridge, an old-timer named Gus who lived in a rusting airstream. His dogs barked like they hadn't seen a human in months. Gus stepped out with a shotgun under his arm, more out of habit than threat. "Looking for info," I said, raising a hand. "About the lady in the Carter place." He spat into the dirt. "You mean the Queen?" "Yeah, she's been busy. Told folks she was sent by the county to fix it up. Even hired a couple drifters to help patch the roof, paid 'em in beer and promises." "Any idea how long she's been there?" "Since spring thaw, about half a year. Moved in with a truck full of junk, said she had permission. Nobody believed her, but hell, it's mountain country, folks keep to themselves." Back in town, I called my lawyer Mark with the updates. He sighed. "That helps us. The fact she's been public about moving in, bragging about it, and lying about ownership. That's good. We can show intent. She's not some desperate squatter, she's opportunistic. Still, knowing that didn't help me sleep any better. The longer she stayed, the more she rooted herself in. So I decided to get proof, not just words, but evidence. I bought a trail camera, the kind hunters use, and drove up just before dusk. I parked a mile down the road and hiked the rest of the way through the trees. My boots sank into the damp ground and my breath fogged in the cold air. The house was lit up like a Christmas ornament. Through the window I could see her, sitting on my couch, or rather the couch that used to be mine, eating something out of a can while watching TV. The faint blue flicker of the screen painted the log walls. There were plants on the windowsill now, a rug I didn't own, and cheap furniture that looked straight out of a thrift store apocalypse. I crept around the back and attached the camera to a tree with a perfect angle toward the front porch. I wanted to know who came and went. Something about this felt bigger than just her. Next morning, when I checked the footage, I almost dropped my coffee. Around midnight, a van had pulled up. 2 men got out carrying boxes. They stayed for nearly an hour, unloading what looked like crates of tools, maybe appliances. At one point, Karen came out in a robe and pointed toward the back of the cabin, directing them. This wasn't someone trying to live quietly. She was moving in like she'd found free real estate. I sent the footage to Mark. He called back within minutes. Okay, that's enough. We're filing for an emergency injunction to bar her from altering or leasing the property, but Tom, yeah? Keep your distance, I mean it. Don't confront her. Not until the sheriff's order is ready. If she's involved with other people, you don't want this turning ugly. Too late for that, I thought. It already was ugly. Later that day, I decided to pay a visit anyway, but just to observe. The smell of paint hit me before I reached the porch. She was remodeling. Inside, I could hear hammering. I knocked once. "Go away," came her voice from inside. "I just want to talk," I said. "You people don't stop, do you?" she shouted. "First the bank, now this. You think you can scare me out? I've got rights. This is my house." I walked back down the dirt road, her voice echoing behind me, echoing in my head. You people. Somehow she'd twisted it all in her mind, turned herself into the victim and me into the intruder. I didn't know what her full story was yet, but I knew one thing. It wasn't just squatters' rights anymore. It was delusion, maybe even fraud. And now, she wasn't just living in my home. She was building a story around it. I rolled up the mountain road the next morning with a pit in my stomach and a GoPro mounted discreetly on my dashboard. I hadn't slept more than a few hours and my head was pounding, but I needed to see it for myself. Not just for the lawsuit, for my own sanity. And sure enough, she was still there. The cabin looked transformed. Not better, just different, wrong. The original cedar exterior was now covered in what looked like beige vinyl siding, installed badly, like a drunk raccoon had attempted DIY on YouTube. There were wind chimes everywhere, plastic garden gnomes along the porch, and, I swear to God, a flamingo wearing a tiara on the roof. As I stepped out of the truck, I spotted a fresh banner nailed across the front of the cabin. Sacred Pines Wellness Retreat, by appointment only. My jaw clenched so hard it cracked. She had turned my house into a goddamn business. I didn't even knock this time. I stood at the edge of the gravel drive and took photos. Wide shots, zoom-ins, time-stamped, geolocated. If she thought she could claim adverse possession by improving the place, she'd better pray the court accepted plastic Buddha statues as structural value. 2 unfamiliar cars were parked off to the side. One had Oregon plates. The other was a Tesla, the kind of car that screams, "I microdose mushrooms and own 6 crypto wallets." It all felt surreal. Then the door opened. Karen strutted out in a poncho, holding a crystal in one hand and what looked like a clipboard in the other. Behind her trailed two people, early 30s, yoga mat types, both barefoot and beaming like they were about to take ayahuasca in the basement. "Good morning," she called brightly, like we were old friends. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't disturb the energy field today. We're hosting a chakra realignment session." "You're running a business out of my property," I said flatly, camera still rolling. "Our property," she corrected. "I've invested thousands into this space. You left it to rot. I brought it back to life. That makes me a stakeholder. You don't get to just sweep in and claim what someone else nurtured. You've been here 6 months. You painted the damn fireplace and put up a bunch of dollar store Buddhas. That doesn't make you a stakeholder. It makes you a trespasser with glitter." Karen narrowed her eyes, suddenly dropping the New Age act. "You're going to regret harassing a spiritual healer. Karma's a bitch, Tom." She knew my name. She shouldn't have. I'd never told her. Later that day, back in town, I walked into the zoning department with a thick stack of photos and video. The clerk took one look at the Sacred Pines signage and sighed. "Unlicensed lodging, operating a business on residential land. No permit, no tax license, no sanitation compliance. Yeah, we'll send an inspector. Might take a few days. She'll get fined." "Can you shut her down?" I asked. "Not until a court order, but trust me, she keeps going like this. We'll bury her in violations." That helped. A little. But Karen wasn't slowing down. She was accelerating. The next day, her Sacred Pines retreat was posted on Airbnb. Someone forwarded me the link through a burner Reddit account. She listed the place as an off-grid soul sanctuary, charging $400 a night, minimum 3-night stay. Facilitated by a certified intuitive energy guide with decades of cosmic alignment experience. The photos she used showed the inside of my cabin. The walls I'd planned to insulate, the windows I'd budgeted to replace, the old wooden frame bed I'd planned to burn. It was all there, turned into a freaking hippie Disneyland. My blood boiled and I nearly threw my phone across the diner. Instead, I pulled up my laptop, logged into my county court portal, and uploaded every single image, every video, and a fresh affidavit explaining that not only was Karen illegally occupying my home, she was actively profiting from it. That, combined with the fact that she'd changed the locks, claimed false ownership, and begun remodeling, should have been enough to qualify for expedited action. But then she played her next card. That evening, as I drove past the cabin one more time, just to see who was staying there, I saw red and blue lights flashing. I stopped. 2 men stood on the porch in full police uniforms. One of them was talking to Karen, who pointed at me like she was picking someone out of a lineup. He walked over. "Are you Tom Harper?" I nodded slowly. "Sir, we got a call about you trespassing on private property. I'm going to need you to turn off the engine, step out of the vehicle, and provide ID." "What the hell are you talking about?" I said. "That's my house," Karen shouted from behind him. "He's been harassing me for weeks. He threatened me. I'm scared for my life." I looked at the cop, then at his badge. No name, just police. The second officer stood too stiffly, too clean. They didn't look local. That's when I noticed the cruiser. No department markings. Just a white Ford with a magnetic sheriff support sticker slapped on the side. They weren't real cops. They were either hired muscle or total psychos playing dress-up. I didn't panic. I smiled. "Hey," I said calmly. "Would you mind if I called the county sheriff to confirm jurisdiction before I step out?" The 2 officers hesitated. The one closest to me shifted on his heels. The other one glanced back at Karen, who suddenly looked nervous. I put the truck in reverse and rolled slowly back down the drive. I didn't wait. I drove straight into town and filed a police report. Impersonating an officer is a felony. And now I had photos, license plates, video, and a sworn statement. Karen had just escalated this from civil squatting to full-blown criminal territory, and I was ready to blow the whole thing wide open. By the end of that week, I'd had enough. I wasn't just pissed anymore, I was done. Done playing by the slow, useless rules while Karen danced barefoot across my property like some enlightened squatter goddess. Done watching her parade tourists through my front door while city officials shuffled papers and nodded sympathetically. I called Mark, my lawyer, told him I wanted to go nuclear. He paused. Define nuclear, Tom. I'm talking demolition, I said. Full teardown, permits, bulldozer. If I can't live in it, neither can she. He didn't laugh. That's why I like Mark. He got quiet. If the house is structurally compromised, or if you've got a legitimate engineering report that says it's unsafe, yeah, you'd have the right to demolish your own structure. You'll need to go through the county and file a demo permit. It's extreme, but it's legal. And if she's in there, well, the clock's ticking for her to move out. I had a report within 24 hours. Turned out the roof she'd repaired was sagging under improperly anchored trusses. The electrical panel she had rewired was a literal fire hazard, and mold had spread from the bathroom to the kitchen thanks to a leaky pipe she'd patched with duct tape and good intentions. The building inspector all but whispered, "Light it up," when he handed me the signed hazard declaration. Next came the permits, filed and stamped in less than 2 days. One silver lining of living in a small Colorado county. Paperwork flies when the building's a threat. On a chilly Tuesday morning, I pulled up the road with a rented bulldozer in tow and 2 camera drones fully charged. I had a full crew, demolition foreman, safety inspector, even a guy with a clipboard I didn't actually need but who looked official as hell. I stood at the base of the gravel path and watched Karen come storming out like she'd just caught me trying to barbecue her dog. "What do you think you're doing?" she screeched. "Executing a court-authorized, county-approved demolition of my hazardous property," I said coolly, handing her a copy of the permit. "You've got 10 minutes to get your stuff out. After that, everything turns into mulch." She looked at the paper, then at me, then at the bulldozer, then at the drone buzzing overhead. "You psychopath, you can't do this. I live here." "You squatted here," I corrected. "Big difference." Then she lost it. Started screaming about legal action, housing rights, spiritual violation of sacred ground. It all blurred into high-pitched static. She called someone on her phone. I didn't care. The demolition team was already strapping on safety gear. "Get off my property!" she shrieked, flinging a potted plant at the excavator. It missed by 3 feet. I leaned against the truck, sipping coffee, and watched as the bulldozer roared to life. Her shrieking turned into pleading. She ran up to the dozer, waving her arms. The operator stopped. "Hey," I said to her, walking forward, "you've got 8 minutes now. I'd use them to grab whatever's worth more than $20. Then the sirens came. Not 1, but 2 police SUVs. Red and blue lights flashing. Real ones this time. Department decals, county plates, uniformed deputies. I stepped back, hands up just to be safe. Out of the passenger seat stepped a man I didn't recognize. Tall, clean-cut, vest reading sheriff's command. Before I could speak, he walked right past me and up to the bulldozer driver. "You got the permit?" The driver handed it over. The sheriff looked at it, looked at me, nodded. "All in order," Karen screamed behind him. "Are you kidding me? This is police brutality. You're letting them destroy my home." Then something truly beautiful happened. A third vehicle pulled up. Not law enforcement, civilian. 2 men in suits got out, one of them with a badge on his belt and a tablet in his hand. "Department of Public Integrity," one of them said. We're responding to reports of impersonation of law enforcement officers on this property. I didn't even have to say a word, I just pointed. That one, I said. She called in 2 fake cops last week. I've got video, plate numbers, audio. They turned to Karen. She turned white. And then, icing on the cake, one of the deputies said, "That's the same woman from the Barnes case, right?" Apparently, Karen's been busy. Fake retreats, false leases, impersonating authority, forging mail to establish fake residency. She'd been running scams across 3 counties under different names. She wasn't a confused hippie. She was a full-blown career squatter with a gift for spiritual snake oil. She didn't run. She didn't argue. She just shut down. The moment they cuffed her, I started the demolition. The dozer crushed through the front wall like it was papier-mâché. The porch gave way in seconds. Wind chimes flew like shrapnel. Her tiara-wearing flamingo snapped clean in half. It took less than an hour to reduce my dream, and her delusion, to splinters. I filmed every second. By that evening, the video had 500,000 views online. The courtroom was quiet when I stepped in, but there was a tension in the air that buzzed just under the surface, the kind of silence that waits for impact. I wasn't wearing anything fancy, just a decent blazer and clean jeans. No need for theater. The truth didn't need dressing up. Karen, on the other hand, arrived in a wheelchair. No joke, a wheelchair. She rolled in wearing a neck brace, dark sunglasses indoors, and what I swear was a blanket that looked suspiciously like it had been stolen from a Spirit Airlines flight. Her lawyer, a thin man with sweaty hands and the aura of a coupon fraudster, wheeled her in like she was the Pope of Pitiful. "Your Honor," he began immediately, "my client has suffered emotional trauma, unlawful eviction, and physical harm due to the actions of Mr. Harper, who destroyed her home without notice and in violation of her basic human rights." The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a hair bun sharp enough to cut steel, raised one eyebrow and said, "Let's not get theatrical, Mr. Diggs. This isn't daytime television." I was already winning. Mark stood beside me, calm and steady, and handed over our binder of evidence. It wasn't a binder, really. More like a goddamn encyclopedia. Property records, time-stamped video of the illegal entry, copies of every complaint I filed, photos of the banner on the cabin, screenshots of the Airbnb page, and the crown jewel, high-definition footage of Karen orchestrating a chakra ceremony while holding a Bluetooth speaker and shouting at a guest about positive vibration zones. Karen tried to object halfway through. "I was under the impression this was my home," she said loudly. The judge looked directly at her. "You were under many impressions, Ms. Richer, none of them supported by law." Then came the felony charges. The Department of Public Integrity had done a hell of a job. In just 3 weeks, they unearthed Karen's entire playbook. She'd done this at least 4 times in 2 different states, moved into abandoned or foreclosed properties, slapped some throw pillows on a busted futon, made up a fake spiritual title, and started raking in rent from gullible sandal-wearing tourists looking for authenticity. Oh, and those cops she called. Yeah. One of them turned out to be a former security guard at a hardware store. The other had an outstanding warrant for impersonation. In another state. They were hired through Craigslist. The prosecution had a field day. Fraud, trespassing, impersonation of law enforcement, illegal operation of a business without license or permit, tax evasion, criminal mischief, unlawful entry, and obstruction of justice. The charges stacked up like bad feng shui. Karen's lawyer tried to play the mental health card, but it backfired when the psychologist's report clearly stated, "She demonstrates manipulative behavior patterns consistent with long-term deceptive conduct, not delusional, strategic." The judge didn't even need an hour. Her gavel came down like thunder. All charges upheld. The defendant is to be remanded for sentencing. Furthermore, Mr. Harper is awarded full compensation for property damage, emotional distress, and lost investment value. In addition, restitution will be paid from any of the defendant's assets seized during investigation. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just nodded, thanked the judge, and turned to leave. But as I passed Karen, she hissed something under her breath. "You think this is over? You think you win just because the law says so?" I stopped, turned, leaned in slightly. "No," I said. "I win because you're not sleeping in my bed anymore." Outside the courthouse, the media had already set up shop. Apparently, the viral video of the bulldozer had made national news. My inbox was full of offers from journalists, YouTubers, even one reality TV producer asking if I'd be interested in hosting a show called Property Justice. I declined. I wasn't in this for fame, but I did accept the payout, and it was solid, between damages, restitution, and a surprisingly generous settlement from Airbnb, who really didn't like the optics of being used to facilitate a fraud operation. I came out not just even, but ahead. The county expedited my building permit. The debris from the old cabin was hauled away. A new foundation was poured before the leaves even turned yellow. And I started building again. For real this time. No crystal therapy, no Buddha fountains, no fake chakras. Just timber, stone, honest sweat, and a second chance. 8 months later, I stood barefoot on the porch of my brand new mountain home, holding a mug of black coffee that tasted better than anything I'd ever brewed in the city. The deck boards were warm from the morning sun, and the view, damn the view, looked like something off a postcard nobody ever mailed because they wanted to keep it to themselves. The cabin was everything I'd imagined the first time I laid eyes on that abandoned property. Natural stonework, timber beams, solar panels discreetly mounted out back, heated floors, a workshop with proper ventilation, and a wide-open living space where no one had ever burned sage or tried to align energy centers. I built it exactly the way I wanted, from the ground up, legally, deliberately, and permanently. And yeah, the Wi-Fi was better than expected. We were having a little party that afternoon, a sort of housewarming/victory lap. Just a dozen or so folks, Mark, still smug about his perfect courtroom batting average. Gus from up the ridge, who brought venison jerky and his legendary moonshine, Jerry and the crew who helped frame the whole thing, and even Deputy Langley, the real cop, not the cosplay ones Karen hired. He brought a pecan pie and a photo of the demolished cabin printed onto a novelty mug. It said, "Bulldozed bad vibes." Everyone laughed when I opened it. I didn't know who started calling it that, but I wasn't mad about it. At some point, someone put on music and we sat around the fire pit swapping stories about worst tenants, worst landlords, and worst first dates, all of which, oddly, had similar punchlines. Then Gus, halfway through his second flask of rattlesnake medicine, asked loudly, "Hey Tom, whatever happened to her? That crazy woman with the healing crystals and the imaginary cops?" There was a beat of silence. I grinned and walked inside, flicked on the living room TV, and queued up the local news segment I'd saved just for this. The video opened with Karen being led out of a courthouse in an orange jumpsuit, hair flat, sunglasses gone, dignity somewhere in a landfill. The Chiron read, "Serial squatter sentenced in multi-state fraud case." The anchor said she got 4 years, not just for my case, but for every other scam she'd run. Fake leases, forged IDs, tax fraud, even animal cruelty. Apparently one of the rescue dogs she advertised was just a coyote with a limp. People laughed, groaned, applauded. Langley raised his pie slice like a toast. "To justice, and to permits." "Damn right," I said. As the fire died down, I stepped away from the group and wandered out to the edge of the ridge. Below me, the trees rolled down into the valley like a green ocean. The sun was setting, all gold and fire behind the peaks. I thought about how close I'd come to losing all this, about how easily a scam, a smile, and a few lies could eat away at everything you've built. If I'd waited a little longer, doubted myself a little more, given in to one of her rants, maybe none of this would have happened. But I hadn't. I chose to fight, and I won. As the stars came out, I walked back to the house, the sound of laughter and bluegrass music floating on the breeze. I looked back one last time at the horizon, raised my mug, and said quietly, "No crystals, no Karens, just peace." Then I walked inside and closed the door on that story, for good.